Hello, I'm Andrew Hara, the host of the Mom Squad. I wanted to tell you about my movies. All are available on Tubi, which is a free streaming service. The last one is a zombie drama about how a pandemic and isolation could drive a group of people mad. When the virus hits, John finds himself alone and scared until he meets Michael, his protector. But when Karina, another survivor, enters the mix, everything that John and Michael knew will be turned on its head. The last one is a zombie virus movie that's somehow even more relevant today. Plus, it has zombies. Check it out. Borderland is a mexploitation film about living in El Paso. When Sarah finds herself in debt to the cartels, she has until sunrise to find some missing monies with the help of her executioner. Borderland is a true midnight movie and a lot of fun. Finally, the documentary Humble Spirits tells the story of the Hahn family, including champion Jennifer Hahn from El Paso, Texas. The entire Hahn family has grown up in the combat sports and has helped shape who they are both in and out of the ring. Humble Spirits, a family of fighters, is the perfect documentary for boxing fans of all ages. Check out Tubi to watch all my films. And now, let's start the show. Hello, guys. Welcome back to the Bomb Squad. I'm your host, Andrew Hanna, writer, director, podcaster. And we're back with our Summer of Guests. And so, Summer of Guests is always when we like to bring people we've met along the way and have them talk about a film that they want to defend. And so, today we have one of my friends from Twitter. We've known each other. It's been a while. I feel like everyone I've met on Twitter, I've known them for a little while. But we have Justin Drabek.
Hello.
Oh, and you're a writer. Can you tell us a little bit about what you write and different things like that?
Yeah, so basically, I do a lot of film journalism. I was working for a company called Killer Horror Critic for a while, and now I'm at Manor Vellum, basically doing more personal pieces about Spectravision, Elijah Wood's film company. So basically, I'm going through their filmography and sort of doing these sort of universal yet personal pieces about how their films sort of matched where I was in my life whenever I saw them. So like some would be during their release, like I'd be like, okay, well in 2014 I remember this, but like some I saw during the pandemic, and like I sort of talk about that sort of experience and sort of just basically like put myself into like sort of doing a different sort of narrative instead of just being like, here's the review. It's sort of like, here's the review. I'll talk a little bit about the movie, but it's not going to be that. It's going to be like, hey, this sort of matches what's going on in the world, or at the time I was really feeling this way and alone, and this movie like moved me in this way in that direction. So it's kind of a cool experience, and it's led to some cool opportunities from that. Still working on a book about my grandpa, but that's slowly coming along, and hopefully I'll get that done. It's fiction, but it's like, you just go all these different places, do all these different things. You're like, okay, well, I guess I'll get to it when I get to it. So
Right, yeah. And I think like to me that's always the best kind of going back to film criticism. That's always the best kind of film criticism. Like I don't need a
mhm.
synopsis. I want you to like kind of delve a little bit more into it. And
Right.
we just did Daniel Isn't Real with Gory Corey, who's I think Daniel Wasn't Real is Spectrovision.
Yep, it was. Yep.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
we talked a while on the podcast version. We talked a lot about Spectrovision and how it kind of gets. It should be kind of up there with A24 because they release like they really give their filmmakers a chance to like
Yeah,
experiment and make their own kind of kooky stuff. And I think that
for
that's
sure. Like the Greasy Strangler. Oh my God. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie.
yeah. You know what? I couldn't. It's too. I tried because everyone talks about how good it is, and it's too greasy.
It's very greasy. And I like to make a joke, which is kind of going around making the rounds now. And I don't think I was the originator of this, but I'm like, it's the perfect first date movie. Just bring your person you want to date over and be like, yeah, I'm going to show you this movie. It's kind of romantic, kind of, you just, it's like the ultimate test to be like, if you're for like weirdos like me.
Summer of guests, our goal is always to the first time any guest comes on, we let them pick the movie so that we can kind of find a movie that they think is underappreciated. And so Justin picked Westworld, the film, and which is, I mean, Westworld has obviously grown into this bigger franchise with the TV show and stuff. but we're talking about the original film, which was written and directed by Micheal Crichton. It was, and it stars Josh Brolin. Is it Josh Brolin?
No, James Brolin.
James,
James
James's
Brolin.
dad, yeah.
And it's from 1973. And yeah, Josh, give us a little bit of a plot synopsis of
Um,
Westworld.
in the high-tech future, 1983, an adult amusement park features three themed worlds: Westworld, Medieval World, and Roman World. But what happens when the lifelike androids stop being polite and start getting real?
Damn, there was a twist at the end of that plot synopsis.
That's true.
So, Justin, why did you pick Westworld?
Full transparency, because I sort of just was been watching the new season of Westworld and sort of thinking about it, and I watched the movie. It was actually in Portland, and I was just sort of lounging around. And it was such a weird experience being in Portland because I stayed at where I used to live with my old roommate, and it was
Oh,
like
yeah.
it was
That's
so.
surreal,
So I was like
yeah.
sitting there on the couch, and I'm like, this feels familiar, and so I was like,
Right.
just decided to throw on. I was watching the first two episodes there, the new season. And I was like, you know what? I've not watched the movie in a long time. And I started watching it, and then I sort of thought, when we have been talking about this podcast, like, oh, do you have a movie? I'm like, well, I don't think this movie was badly received at the time, but I think it's definitely been sort of left behind in sort of like the lurches. And rewatching, I'm like, man, this has still a lot to say, and the TV series borrows a lot from it and expands upon it, because obviously when you have that many seasons, you're going to expand upon your original
Right.
idea. But I'm like, all these ideas are still there. Like, it's crazy. 1973, be like, wow, it really hit me heavy. So I was like, I want to talk about that. I don't necessarily think it's a movie I have to defend too much, because I think it's pretty well liked for the people who've seen it, but I think it's sort of been sort of looked over, in the grand scheme of things, now that they have the TV series, which has been a fun, frustrating time.
As I say, full disclosure, I've only seen the first two seasons of the show, so I don't know, like,
Yeah.
when we get into parallels, if it goes beyond that. But yeah,
Yeah.
And
I
I
definitely
think,
see it.
yeah,
Micheal Crichton had a really cool idea and put it onto film, which is insane to think about, because it's the guy who gave us ER and then the other theme park
right.
franchise. He liked theme parks that,
Yeah,
that you weren't supposed to do. Like, basically, like, hey, this isn't going to work out. There's going to be some problems. One, dinosaurs. One,
everything
robots.
else, yeah.
Yeah. So,
And I do think that, to me, and it's something that's kind of like, one, you always notice it at the beginning, but then you kind of get wrapped up in the story, both of the movie and the TV series. But it is funny that this is essentially just the same plot as Jurassic Park.
yep.
It just,
Especially the movie. Yeah.
yeah, where it's like they're showing them get there, they show like, oh, it's so wild and great, and then things eventually start breaking down, things that they knew were going to break down from the beginning.
Yep.
And I just think that that's funny that he basically ripped off himself.
Let me do this theme park, but not humans. Let's do dinosaurs. That's cool.
Right.
And then let me take the same plot from Westworld.
One of the things I always like about Micheal Crichton stories in general is that he always likes to take the science seriously, whether that science exists or not. He likes to like pretend like he doesn't want to like kind of be a tongue in cheek. He wants to like at least take that version seriously, especially if you read his books. Like even Congo goes really deep into how the diamonds work. That has no real bearing on the plot. It's just what they're looking for. And I always think that that's, to me, that makes his books and his stories a lot more interesting.
Yeah, the opening of this movie is incredible. I love that it's like, panoramic, and then it's also just like, it's so cool because it also unsettles you in this way that, like, I think is so intentional. It's like, things are going to go wrong once you go into the park yourself as a viewer, but because you're like watching those happy people talk about like how cool of an experience it is. It's like, you can go to the medieval times and live out your fantasies, go to the west, do that, it's like, and then you sort of
Yeah,
watch, and you're like, you sort of get the sense of dread almost from like a newscast. It's a cool
right.
way to open up the film.
Yeah, and the best part about that opening is that it does feel like, I mean, there's been so many news reports where they're just like, "Hey, we're at the opening of the new Alamo Draft House, or at this new amusement park." Like it felt very real, where they're just kind of like, "Here's a fun thing that you can do on the weekend." It's a great way to introduce both Westworld and the general world of the movie, and I thought that was
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah.
It's also they do that. This is always funny, and it shouldn't still be funny to me. But any like retro future stuff will always they're like, man, I think like Disney Star Wars tour is like three times that,
Right,
and
exactly.
you
Yeah.
don't even get to sleep with like C-3PO. So
Which is
No,
all
very
anyone
different.
wants. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wouldn't. I've never been, but I want to go to the full immersion experience. It'd be like, where are my robots that I can sleep with?
Right, but even then, and I mean, I'm very like whatever about it, but it's like you hear these accounts, like even then, it's like a minimum wage guy dressed in like a stormtrooper thing, being like, "Get out of here!" Like it's
Yeah.
nothing like Westworld, where you're like
Right. Of
actually
course
like
not. Yeah.
having shootouts. It's like so
Yeah.
you're paying so much money for a subpar experience. So
Yeah.
Westworld's a real value.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Disney really needs to get on the ball of letting you kill the stormtroopers.
I agree.
Yeah. Come on, man. We're here to have
Let
fun.
us go whole hog with it.
It's basically the premise of Westworld. Be like, I want to see who you are, man. Like, I know there's a person deep inside of you that like this is gonna bring that out. We're like, yeah, we should went there and kill a bunch of stormtroopers. They're like,
Yeah.
those were people.
Right.
Wait, what?
Yeah, that would be so. And like, okay, so going to Westworld, I
Yeah.
think one of the great things I liked about it was that you're following those, like, it's James Brolin and it's Richard Benjamin who play John and Peter, and you're just kind of following them for a lot of the movie as they're just enjoying Westworld, and like, John has like you can tell John's at least heard of it or he's been there before, and Peter's kind of the newbie who's kind of like getting into it. And just like you can really feel their chemistry, like they have real good chemistry. You can tell they're friends,
Oh yeah.
and I love the way that like it's the perfect way because like they kind of treat every situation as if as if one of the friends has already done it, like when someone like I kept thinking of like when you jump into like a lake or something and you're trying to get your friend to do it and you're like, come on, just try it, it's safe. And like that's kind of James Brolin's whole role is just kind of like telling him like, no, we can totally shoot the people here, it's like part
Yeah.
of the experience. And I thought
They can't hurt us. We can hurt them. We get to live their experience. Yeah, I think John's character does say. John does say, yeah, it's like he's bringing Peter for the first time. He's like,
yeah.
you got to experience this, man. This is so cool. And of course, Peter, very much how I'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah. And that's well, and to me, that's always the funny thing of both the show and the movie is that like basic show premise, like you can kill like the gunslingers if you're in Westworld and they're robots, so it doesn't really matter. But the fact that they give them blood has always been like, if I was going to Westworld, I'd be like, can I have the robots that don't bleed human blood? Like I don't need that part of the immersion.
Oh right, yeah. Yeah, same. I don't think I could do it. I would be like, I think I'd have fun, but I want to go there. And of course, I'd be like, I want to sit down and like sit in the saloon and be like, I don't want any violence. I just want to sit here and like see what this is like.
But even then, like when they get there, he's like, "Oh man, like this like chair's really hard and the beds are uncomfortable." It's like, yeah, it's supposed to be like the old West. It's like, oh yeah, that's bad. Things were bad back then.
You guys have gone too far, yeah. Which makes me think because there's also Rome World, and it's like, are they just sleeping on slabs of rock?
Yeah, are they like what happens with it? You have to go to the bathroom. You're like, oh, I just have to go in this hole.
Go anywhere, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Oh my god. Yeah, it's such a cool premise, and I think you're right. It has the chemistry between Richard Benjamin and James Brolin is incredible, and it's like a chemistry you don't see out the gate in a lot of movies these days. Like just two people who know each other. They're like friends. They're deep friends. Like you can see it in the way they interact with each other. Like I can't think of a movie that really has that anymore. That I can really think of, especially in one that's going to be more action based and like, bigger budget sort of feature. Like you don't have even Jurassic Park. You didn't really have that unless it was like a romantic thing with Laura Dern and Sam Neill.
Yeah. Yeah, they definitely have to like get that, and they have to. In most movies, they have to get past the like getting to know each other and becoming friends. And
Right.
so it was kind of refreshing to see them already being friends. Like they never really like even fight. They don't ever take anything too seriously. Like they're just there on vacation, which is so rare in films, And I think that was a great way to introduce us both to the world and like let us go along with these characters.
Mm-hmm.
And also helps that James Brolin has like the most charisma of any person ever.
Oh right.
is a little bit more realistic, at least how I would approach Westworld, where especially like that first day, you'd be kind of like, I don't know about what's going on, you know?
Yeah.
Like they look so real, and that I mean that is the point of the show and the movie is that they're supposed to look like humans. But like in my mind, most people would be like, until you got to that point of like enjoying it, and that's why you need the James Brolin character because you need someone to tell you it's okay.
Hmm.
Wherein like a lot of times in the TV show, they're just like going for it immediately.
Yeah.
Because in here, we don't really see, there's no Ford character really. And so you kind of are more with the like day to day guys, which is interesting.
The closest you have is the head technician, but he's still just a worker, like
Yeah, exactly.
he works for the company, but he's the one who's like sort of being like, he's the one who's like, maybe we should stop this. And I love that board meeting.
And yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up because I really like that scene is not only important, but I knew that Crichton was going to put it in there. Like that scene, there's that scene where they're talking about how there's a virus and they need to shut down the entire park, and that's the safest way because the things are starting to kind of malfunction or their viruses are going in more and more robots as every day. And
Yep.
then you have that very important scene where the corporate guys are like, "Nah, we'll just stop letting people in, and then we can deal with these guys, and like we're fine. Like we know how to deal with this."
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, go ahead.
Famous last words, of course.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's Crichton's like bread and butter too. It's like, okay, we're gonna have one person with like a conscientious to be like, we shouldn't do this, and then you're gonna have like the park owner in Jurassic Park, and then here it's sort of the guy being like, no, 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 it's fine. These can't hurt them, which is such a thing.
right.
It's like we're in control.
The
We're in control.
hubris.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Like we program them. They're gonna be fine. And the one guy's being like, well, it doesn't seem to be fine because we got this one guy, is trying to kill people, and then we got like other robots being like, no, don't. Which I love that scene, and I wish there was more of that. As I said, just being like, I wish we got more scenes with sort of like guests sort of asking for too much, and the host being like, nope, mm-mm.
right, right.
Yeah, although I do enjoy because Yul Brynner with the steel eyes on his murder spree is a pretty good
So
ending
good,
to it.
yeah.
I love
Yeah.
when the guy's escaping, he runs into the tech. The tech's like, "Oh, you could try something, but he is going to kill all of us. Like
Yep.
it's not going to work."
Right.
Yeah, there's no optimism in that guy's
Yeah.
voice. Like, nope, don't even run. Why are you running? Because he's gonna catch you.
It's such a good scene, and then the next thing happens, that guy gets like toast. He's toast
Immediately,
Yeah, like seconds later. Yeah.
after basically you're being told for this whole movie, if you're Peter, it's safe. Everything's going to be fine. We can do, like they can't hurt us. They can't hurt us. And basically that's like the company tow line. And then the first time he runs into it, like after shit hits the fan, runs into that guy, he's like, nope,
yeah, yeah.
we're,
And
we're, we're done.
okay, so just I kind of want to spoil this scene just because it's such a good scene and it's so important. I really want to talk about it.
Okay.
So they like the whole time they've been they're in Westworld and the two John and Peter have been messing with the gunslinger played by Yul Brynner, and they've been like killing him every time they run into him, and he's like essentially their foil. And so he shows up, and the park is now malfunctioned. They've gone offline. Another Crichton. Crichton loves for things to go offline, but they've run into him, and then they're kind of like, okay, we don't really want to deal with you because we're hungover, but let's do this real quick. And James Brolin is like, let me do it. And so they do the old classic, standoff, and he shoots him. And that's when James Brolin realizes that he's really been hit. And then Yul Brynner shoots him again, and he kills him. And that scene is so good, because like we were saying, James Brolin should be the star of this movie. Like he's handsome, he's charismatic, and he's a little bit more likable. Like they're both likable, but he's like that kind of like instant likability. And so to see him get shot, it's like it's like the explosion. It's like, oh, now it's real. Like things are bad, you know?
There's that moment where like he doesn't think he got shot because there's no way. He's done this probably however many times he's done it before. In his face reaction, looks over at Peter like, look at it, I got shot. But then he's like, holy crap, I got shot.
Yeah.
It's such a powerful, great scene.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine,
And then like
imagine Mickey Mouse just stabs you. You'd be like, what just happened?
And again, like, and then when they shoot him again, it's like an instant, like he died. And then there's like that shot where they just show him like in the dirt, like very unceremoniously. And just the juxtaposition between that and every time they would show the gunslingers die, it was like this big kind of like big motion and big like
Yep,
hubbub. And so like the juxtaposition between the reality of, oh no, you're just gonna die in the dirt. There's no like big like payoff. I think that was it was really smart the way he like kind of did that without really telling the audience he was doing it.
exactly. I mean, it's such a well-directed movie, which is Crichton only directed this Great Train Robbery and like one other movie, I think. Uh, so
I,
it's
I
interesting
did
because
look it
like,
up, but I
yeah,
forgot.
I can't remember what that one was, but it's interesting because like everyone assumes Michael Crichton like, oh yeah, novelist, but he's also like, oh, also doctor. It's like that crazy story. Michael Crichton married like
right.
18 times or something. It's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
insane.
a
But it's so
complicated
interesting.
man.
Yeah, but
He
the direction in this is so on point in a way that I wouldn't expect it to be. And I think in a way a lot of people would be like, oh, Michael Crichton directed that and wrote it. He'd be like, oh, you mean the Jurassic Park guy? Yeah, yeah. But one, it's good. One, it's directed well. One, the acting is phenomenal. Like every everyone is in, from the main characters to like the guest you host you barely spend any time with, or the guest you barely spend any time with. Everyone knows their assignment and does it. I don't really like that phrase, but I just used it.
right.
But it's
No,
true.
it
It's like
tracks.
everyone signed up and did it, and like it's believable. Sure, it's got the '70s sort of shtick of like because it was made in the '70s, but it's got just characters who seem to be characters, and no one's just phoning it in.
You hear that he's only directed 3 movies, and you kind of like in your mind, you're like, well, of course, he's a writer. How good of a director can he be? And then, like, especially Westworld, you're like, oh, he's a really good,
Yeah.
he's a really good director. He like knows how to handle tension and scenes, and like he knows how to, like you were saying, he really knows how to like add the director or like work with the actors and make them feel believable. And like this movie, it's not like Yul Brynner is playing a cowboy who's secretly a robot, who's secretly a cowboy, and it's like
Yeah.
that's a hard role to play and to even direct. And so, like the fact that he does so well with this is pretty impressive.
Oh, for sure. And then thinking about like 1973, I think this movie did well in the theaters too, but it's like presenting ideas that like I don't think a lot of people technology was so not what it is today, obviously.
Right.
Blanket
It's
statement.
it's to me it's almost like what's impressive because it's like obviously like above ground and like kind of the first hour of the movie it's very like okay it's old west sets, it's like kind of cheesy medieval sets, whatever, but it's like okay it's an amusement park, like you get that, but then like at the end where like it's just a cowboy like chasing him through these like dark tunnels, where they're like actually like doing like the fixing him, and that's the entire vibe of the show is like that like
Yeah.
20 minutes, it's like that's such a strong like aesthetic that it's like okay they made the show out of this, it's very interesting to me that it's like that's what carried forward to the show where it's like
Yeah.
oh, they didn't even change anything, it basically just looks like this.
I also like the scene where they're like basically they have this in the series a lot too, where the workers come down when the robots are shut down and the guests are sleeping and like pull a robot that needs to be repaired. You know,
Right.
throw them on the back of the wagon. It's just such a weird thing because like you feel even though these aren't humans, the movie does a good job doing this. The show does a better job is making you like empathize with these robots who are just there for the human pleasure, but like you're still like, oh man, that's like they're body bagging them. They're like throwing them on like the back of a truck to go reprogram them. It's like such a weird feeling, and like to have the movie end that way without
Well,
having to dive into
yeah.
the it's the '70s. It's the '70s, so the story they're trying to tell is more the less explored and like deep, but it's like there. It's like it's a morality tale. It's like Crichton's trying to tell you something about like this could be the future and it may not be great. Even though it seems cool, there's going to be problems. And let me tell you as a storyteller what those problems are in an hour and 28 minutes.
But no, interesting. Yeah, thank you for joining us. I'm definitely glad you picked this because it's one of those things where I always kind of wanted to watch it, especially once the TV show came out, and I just never really did because I watched the TV show.
Yeah, I was
So
I was so
I'm
happy when I
glad that
saw it
we're
was under
forced.
90 minutes too. So it's
Oh yeah.
quick.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
Just
cool.
get it,
But
get
it,
it
but it,
done.
as I said, but it tells the whole story. Like so many movies that
Yeah.
are just quick because some executives like, oh, I need to cut down 30 minutes so we can get more runtime in the theater. Like you're
Right.
like, oh, cool. So
Yeah.
we just lost that whole character's arc.
Yeah. Why is Terry Crews here?
Yeah. What's
Why is this
that?
corpse there? Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you doing, McG?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh gosh. Yep.
but but let's not get started on that because
No.
that's another 3 hours. I could tell you why Terminator Salvation is bad.
we'll never find the good side of that.
No.
But yeah, well, thanks for
Yeah,
joining.
it's
Oh, do you
awesome.
want to tell people where to find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Justin_Drabek. That's probably the social media I use the most. Yeah, so then if you want to read some of the stuff I've written, I've got a link tree attached to that, so that's the easiest way to find that. That's pretty much it. Yeah, and
Cool.
so
And
we'll be
oh, go
back
ahead.
here for Future World, right?
Yes, yeah, no, for Toad Road for
So,
sure.
yeah,
Maybe
so
not
yeah.
Future,
No, I'm just
but and yeah, and I'll put the links down at the bottom as always. But just if you're
awesome.
listening and you want to add already, go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, and thanks for joining us. And guys, we'll see you next time on the Bomb Squad. Thanks for watching the Bomb Squad. Please, while you're here, give us a like and a subscribe. We really appreciate it, and it means a lot.